Why do some wine and cheese pairings taste better together than either one alone? Why do some wines collapse when paired with certain cheeses? And what will surprise you about cheese in the way that it's similar to wine? In today's episode, you'll hear the stories and tips that answer those questions in our chat with Michael Finnerty, author of the terrific new book, The Cheese Cure: How Comté and Camembert Fed My Soul. By the end of our conversation, you'll also discover how acidity and bubbles transform rich cheese, how cheese ages differently from wine, why tyrosine crystals in aged cheese create both crunch and pleasure, why older cheeses can develop surprising flavors like rum and raisin rather than simply becoming sharper or saltier, the difference between a cheesemonger and an affineur, how Michael's midlife pivot from journalism to selling cheese began, why selling cheese felt more meaningful to Michael than covering wars, elections, and other major news events, and what makes London's borough market special beyond the food itself. Do you have a thirst to learn about wine? Do you love stories about wonderfully obsessive people, hauntingly beautiful places, and amusingly awkward social situations? Well, that's the blend here on the Unreserved Wine Talk podcast. I'm your host, Natalie McLean, and each week I share with you unfiltered conversations with celebrities in the wine world, as well as confessions from my own tipsy journey as I write my third book on this subject. I'm so glad you're here. Now pass me that bottle, please, and let's get started. Welcome to episode 387. All right, so what's new in the drinks world? Well, a craft distillery in Scotland released a whiskey matured in barrels that previously held hot sauce, and early tasters say the finish carries a faint, smoky heat that sneaks up on you rather than shouts. A collector in London set a new but strange record on April 16th by successfully sabering a bottle of champagne using nothing but a frozen baguette during a charity gala. Toronto's Bar Raval and Vancouver's Botanist Bar are observing a pivot toward hyper-sustainable spirits, specifically those using upcycled fruit waste. I'm all for recycling, sustainability, and so on, but I just don't know how I'd feel about my cocktail having upcycled fruit waste. An eccentric collector in Bordeaux has reportedly completed a 10-year project to build a full-sized replica of the Eiffel Tower using nothing but empty wine crates. Standing nearly 3 stories tall in his backyard, the structure uses crates from every first-growth chateau, arranged chronologically by vintage. The local city council is currently debating whether the structure constitutes a sculpture or an unlicensed storage facility. But for now, it remains the world's largest game of Jenga. And in the Science Corner, did you know that yeast cells produce tiny amounts of glycerol as a byproduct of fermentation? And that glycerol is one of the primary reasons that wine feels round and smooth on your palate rather than thin and sharp. Glycerol is technically a type of alcohol, a sugar alcohol, but it almost has no ethanol content and contributes no perceptible flavor on its own. What it does do is add viscosity and a subtle sweetness that softens acidity and tannin. Winemakers in warmer climates where grapes ripen fully before harvest tend to produce wines with higher glycerol levels naturally. This is one of the reasons that big ripe reds from Australia, California, or the Okanagan can feel plusher than a cool climate Burgundy at the same level of alcohol. The yeast just make more glycerol in the heat. And one more scientific fact to thrill your inner nerd. There is a winemaking process called flash d'étang, where grapes are heated to about 85 degrees Celsius, then immediately sent into a vacuum chamber. This causes the grape skins to explode from the inside out. That sounds like implode, but whatever. While that sounds violent, the science is fascinating. It instantly extracts deep color and soft tannins, without the need for weeks of maceration, the process of soaking grape skins in grape juice. It's essentially instant aging through the power of a scientific pop, though the jury is still out on the quality of these wines versus those that undergo a traditional maceration. I also wonder if they have the same aging potential. For your food and drink calendar this week, April 29th is National Shrimp Scampi Day. This dish started as a Venetian preparation for scampi, the Italian word for langoustines. But when Italian immigrants arrived in the U.S. and didn't find those crustaceans on the menu, they substituted shrimp and kept the name anyway. It's one of the more successful rebrandings in culinary history. To celebrate, try a scampi spritz by infusing dry vermouth with lemon zest and garlic for a savory pre-dinner sipper, or pair the dish with a bone-dry saline vermencino to mimic the saltier of the Mediterranean coast. April 30th is both National Raisin Day and National Bubble Tea Day. It takes roughly 4 tons of fresh grapes to produce just 1 ton of raisins, which means your snack is essentially a concentrated vineyard in a tiny little box. Celebrate by pouring an aged sherry, which is the ultimate liquid raisin. Or mix a raisin-infused rye whiskey into a Manhattan for a deep oxidized twist on a classic. On the bubble tea side, the holiday is less about a single drink than an entire textual hobby, a community built around the particular joy of chewing on your beverage. Celebrate with a taro-spiked milk tea mocktail, a black tea highball with tapioca pearls on the side, or a bubble tea-inspired cocktail shaker race if you want your evening to feel like a chemistry lab with better shoes. May 1st brings International Sauvignon Blanc Day, held every year on the first Friday of May. And it was launched in 2010 by the New Zealand Wine Council. What most people don't know is that Sauvignon Blanc is one of the 2 parent grapes of Cabernet Sauvignon, having crossed with Cabernet Franc sometime in 18th century Bordeaux. Celebrate with a blind tasting of Old World versus New World expressions to see if you're a Loire minerality person or a New Zealand tropical fruit person. Pair them with goat cheese and fresh herbs, or try a backyard spritz built on citrus and fresh herbs. Saturday, May 2nd is the 152nd Kentucky Derby in Louisville. The mint julep has been the official drink of the race since the 1930s. Churchill Downs pours approximately 120,000 of them over Derby weekend, which requires 10,000 bottles of Woodford Reserve, 1,000 pounds of fresh mint, and 60,000 pounds of crushed ice, roughly the weight of 5 adult African elephants, deployed entirely in the service of keeping bourbon cold. The event's official bourbon has been Woodford Reserve for years, an arrangement that costs Woodford's parent company, Brown-Forman, a considerable sum in sponsorship fees. To celebrate, make your own mint julep. 2 ounces of bourbon, or a Canadian whiskey that's made in the bourbon style, fresh mint, simple syrup, crushed ice, a sprig on top, and an imaginary bet on the horse with the best name. Go Flicker! Okay, that's probably not the best imaginary name. May 3rd is International Baga Day. Baga is Portugal's sturdy red grape, native to the region, and it tends to make wines with grip, nerve, and zero interest in being ignored. It's tannic, high acid, and wildly food-friendly once you give it a chance. Celebrate with a Portuguese red flight, a charcuterie board that leans smoky and salty, or a bring the weird bottle dinner where everyone has to explain what they poured without sounding like they copied the back label. May 4th is National Candied Orange Peel Day. Candied orange peels were originally a luxury item in the 14th century, used as both a sweet treat and a digestive aid. So you're basically participating in a medieval wellness trend. Garnish your drink with an oversized house-made candied peel, or stir up an old-fashioned using orange peeled infused simple syrup for a sticky, nostalgic aroma. It's also, of course, a Star Wars Day, May the 4th. May the Force be with you, which means a galactic cocktail menu is technically mandatory for anyone who owns a lightsaber or a strong opinion about the prequel trilogy. May the 5th is Cinco de Mayo, the best-known drinks holiday in this entire week. and also one of the most misidentified. It marks Mexico's 1862 victory over the French army at the Battle of Puebla, not Mexico's Independence Day, which is September 16th. That clarification saves at least one group chat argument every year. Skip the standard margarita and build a batanga. Tequila, lime, and cola stirred with the same knife used to cut limes. For the crowd, a spicy Macalata-style beer works beautifully, and a margarita station with absurdly specific salt options. Smoked chili, hibiscus, black lava is an instant conversation starter for the friend who treats rim salts like a personal manifesto. All right, coming up next week, I am doing a, what do you call when you do, not a triple header is for 3, but a 4-header? I don't know. So I'm talking about Mother's Day on 4 TV shows next week, so I'm going to share a couple of those with you now. Because Sunday, May 9th, is Mother's Day. Make a calendar note. And whether you were raised by a mother or another remarkable woman who shaped your life, you may be looking for a gift that goes beyond the usual flowers and chocolates. Well, on CTV's CP24 breakfast show, we've got you covered. We're pairing books and bottles for a thoughtful gift she'll remember. Now, if Mom says she doesn't want a gift for Mother's Day, she is testing you. It is a trap. Buy her a book and a bottle, or safer yet, buy all of the wines I'm going to recommend. They're perfect for both Mother's Day hosting and gifting. Why books and bottles? Well, every great mom is a storyteller, and every great wine has a story to tell. So I've matched each bottle with a book that Mom will love, sometimes by the country, sometimes by the author, and sometimes just by the spirit of the page itself. And here's a thoughtful packaging tip. Wrap the book and bottle together in a beautiful linen tea towel tied with twine. It's reusable, it's pretty, and it doubles as a kitchen gift. Mom wins twice. My first pairing is the Bottega Il Vino de Poeti Venezia DOC Spumante Rosé from Veneto, Italy. We're pairing this bottle with Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert. The book is a celebration of La Dolce Vita, the Italian good life, especially through food and drink. Now, the wine's name, Il Vino dei Poeti, means the wine of poets, a tribute to artists who express the joy of life, much like Elizabeth finds her spark again over a perfect meal. Crafted by Bottega, a family winery with 4 centuries of history, this rosé is one of Italy's most iconic sparkling wines. They have been making wine before Jane Austen was making sentences. The color alone is visual poetry, a delicate blush pink with a fine, persistent stream of bubbles. On the nose, you'll find cherry, raspberry, and wild blackberry, followed by a soft, floral whisper. And because it's a brut, it remains dry and sophisticated, never cloying. It's exactly what you want in your glass when you're reading about a life-changing afternoon in an Italian cafe. Just imagine how magical this wine would be paired with grilled octopus or a fresh caprese salad. Next up, we have the gorgeous Villa Maria Private Bin Sauvignon Blanc from Marlborough, New Zealand. And it pairs beautifully with The Luminaries by Eleanor Catton, the Booker Prize-winning novel set in 1860s New Zealand. The combination captures a spring moment of relaxation, reflection, and connection. This wine is the elegant extra and what Mum deserves on her special day. Villa Maria is one of New Zealand's most respected wineries, and Marlborough is the Sauvignon Blanc capital of the world. The 2025 vintage of this wine just won a gold medal at the Concours Mondial de Bruxelles. That's like winning the Sauvignon Blanc Olympics. This is classic Marlborough style, bursting with lime zest, lemongrass, grapefruit, and a hint of passion fruit. It's bright, it's vibrant, and it finishes with a crisp snap that wakes up every taste bud, like opening a window to a spring afternoon after a long, dreary winter. How dreamy this would be with seared scallops and capers. Next up, we have 2 classics, Anne of Green Gables by Lucy Maud Montgomery and Beach Glass White by Sprucewood Shores Winery. They are both unmistakably Canadian and both reveal their charm in layers, the way Anne uncovers her family one chapter at a time. Beach Glass is made at Ontario's only beachfront winery and named for those smooth, sea-tumbled pieces you'll find on the beaches of Lake Erie North Shore. The wine is a blend that leads with Riesling for a bright top note, then folds in Pinot Grigio for its softer pear and melon side. Like Mom's best advice, it shines in the sun and reveals its polish with a little time. In other words, she was right. You'll smell clean, fresh aromas of grapefruit, lemon curd, and a cool whisper of sea spray on warm stone. On the palate, it's layered like a fresh Canadian spring morning, crisp at the start, sunny in the middle, with a soft mineral breeze on the finish. It tastes like optimism, but with structure. This would be wonderful with a citrus-glazed salmon warm off the grill. And for our final pairings, we have French Bloom. The first is French Bloom Le Blanc, which pairs beautifully with My Life in France by Julia Child, a joyful memoir. Julia found her calling in France, learning to cook with curiosity and zero pretension. French Bloom Le Blanc carries that same joie de vivre. Both the book and the bottle are deeply rooted in France, and both are perfect for elevated mindful living. French Bloom is an alcohol-free sparkling wine created by founders Constance Jablonski and Mary Frère-Jean Tattanger. It's crafted from organic Chardonnay grapes grown in Lemieux in the south of France and was named the world's best alcohol-free sparkling wine for the past 3 years at the World Sparkling Wine Competition. It's also just been named the official non-alcoholic sparkling wine for the Formula One for the next decade. Most remarkably, it's matured in new French oak barrels, which is almost unheard of in the alcohol-free world. It opens with a lovely citrus zest and crisp pear on the nose, and then comes in with a creamy, silky texture which rolls across the palate with hints of honey and beeswax. It finishes with that elegant saline note you'd expect from a fine French sparkling wine. How elegant this would be with fresh oysters and a squeeze of lemon. I also have French Bloom Le Rosé, a blend of organic Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. Like Le Blanc, it is also certified organic, vegan, and halal, with no added sugars, sulfites, or preservatives, and just 19 calories per glass. 19 calories is basically a rounding error. You'll burn more than that just getting up and going over to the chiller ice bucket to pour yourself another glass. Mom can enjoy this celebratory pour at brunch or dinner, or both. On the nose, you'll pick up wild strawberries and rose petals first, then white peach and a pop of red currant. The bubbles dance lightly across the palate, finishing soft, silky, and refreshing. Wouldn't this sing alongside a bowl of chilled gazpacho swirled with basil oil? So here's to the quiet magic of a glass and a page, and to the woman who taught us how to appreciate both. Also talked about Mother's Day wines on City TV's Breakfast Television. Completely different approach, though, this time. Mother's Day is coming up, and whether you are raised by a mom or by another special woman who shared her wisdom along the way, we all know that she isn't just a parent. She's a one-woman superhero squad. Yes! So today we're toasting her invisible talents with 5 drinks that match her superpowers, sip for sip. Mom's powers truly are supernatural, faster than a speeding text chat, gifted with supersonic hearing that detects a cookie jar opening downstairs, and able to glide past a sulky teenager in a single bound. Every one of her superpowers deserves a drink and a Marvel movie. We're kicking it off with Smirnoff Ice Light Original, made in Quebec for our time traveler mom. She can stretch a 30-minute dinner into a 3-hour conversation, turn a 5-minute hug into a full soul reset, and remember exactly when you last called grandma. Smirnoff Ice Light has that same time-bending magic with its gentle fizz and just 4% alcohol that makes the evening linger longer. The light version keeps all of the refreshment, but with 1/3 fewer calories. On the nose, you get bright lemon and lime, the kind of zest that spritz up a sunny afternoon. This sip is crisp, fizzy, and refreshing. It'd be lovely with crispy fish tacos on a warm patio. And I should note that all of the drinks we're tasting today are available in the LCBO. Next up is Oyster Bay Pinot Grigio from Hawke's Bay, New Zealand, to toast Mom, the finder of lost things. In 30 seconds, she can locate a single sock under Mount Laundry, the TV remote that vanished into the sofa cushions, and the truth in a teenager's story. Oyster Bay has its own kind of finder energy. Their winemakers go vineyard parcel by parcel, picking out the freshest, purest fruit flavors and bottling them before a single note gets lost on its way from vine to glass. What makes Oyster Bay stand out is the regional designation on every label. While many New Zealand brands blend fruit from across the country, Oyster Bay tells you exactly where each wine comes from. This Pinot Grigio is 100% Hawke's Bay, captured in their state-of-the-art facility in the heart of the region. It's the boutique craftsmanship of a small estate paired with the reach of a global producer. This wine pours pale gold with a hint of green. On the nose, it's crisp pear, white peach, and a whisper of lemon blossom. The palate is refreshing with a citrus edge and a firm backbone, which is exactly why Mum loves it so much. It's the wine that turns a quick supper into a whole evening, and it would be brilliant with a creamy lemon linguine with sweet Dungeness crab. For our third wine, we're heading to the south of France with Gérard Bertrand's Gris Blanc Rosé, our wine for Mum the heart healer. She has this quiet magic where one hug, one cup of tea, one perfectly timed snack can make everything better. This rosé has that same gentle comfort. Gérard Bertrand was a professional rugby player before taking over his vineyard at age 22. Today, he runs more than a dozen estates across the Languedoc, and he's a leading voice in biodynamic winemaking, the highest level of caring for Mother Earth. This wine pours pale petal pink, light as a blush. The aromas open with white peach, pink grapefruit, and a soft floral lift. On the palate, you get fresh strawberry, red currant, and a citrus zip that finishes dry and refreshing. It's a glass of sunshine that softens the edges of any day, and it would be irresistible next to grilled rosemary lamb skewers, charred and dripping in olive oil. And finally, we're coming home again with Joie Farm's En Famille Chardonnay from BC's Okanagan Valley for the amazing memory mom. She remembers every milestone, your favorite meals, and that one thing you said in 2009 that you conveniently forgot. This Chardonnay holds memories in the same way. You'll always remember where you were the first time you tasted it. It's so good. Joie Farm En Famille is French for joy with family, which makes this a beautiful Mother's Day wine. The fruit comes from the Convida and Seacrest Mountain vineyards. Convida sits on the Skaha Bench subappellation, one of BC's newest and most exciting additions to the wine map. Winemaker Richard Carnock does ambient ferments, which means no commercial yeasts and no shortcuts. He lets the land and the grapes do the work, the opposite of helicopter parenting. His methods have paid off. The 2022 vintage took silver at the Chardonnay du Monde, the world's largest Chardonnay competition. His mother is so proud of him. On the nose, you get lemon curd, white peach, ripe mango, and a soft hint of creme brulee. The palate carries citrus and stone fruit into custard and tropical notes with a fine mineral thread and about 20% new oak supporting the fruit rather than smothering it. The finish is long, elegant, and built to age. This is the Chardonnay that converts the ABC crowd, anything but Chardonnay. Away with you. They arrived skeptical, they left converted. And this Chardonnay would be heavenly paired with pan-seared scallops in a brown butter lemon sauce. I also have the Joie Ferme Pinot Noir, a gorgeous red, now also available in Ontario. Of course, you can order these wines from the winery itself, and you lucky ducks who are in BC and have these wines on your shelves all the time. This is a generous fruit-forward Pinot with a round, silky, smooth texture, and this is the wine you want to drink tonight, even before dinner is on the table, possibly even before you've decided what dinner will be. Or maybe you just decide to skip dinner and drink this wine. Elegant and expressive, this Pinot opens with bright cherry, raspberry jam, and a touch of cinnamon, lifted by notes of small little tiny violets. This would be divine with Pacific Coast cedar planked salmon. So here's to Mum, the only superhero who works without a cape or a vacation, but who always saves the day. On Instagram, I'm at Natalie McLean Wine. Come for the drinks, stay for the heroic pairings. Back to today's episode. Congratulations to Carol Cross from Ontario, who has won a copy of Pressing Matters. I still have one copy left to give away, and 3 of you will win a copy of Michael Finnerty's terrific new book, The Cheese Cure, How Comté and Camembert Fed My Soul. If you'd like to win a copy, please email me and let me know who you'd like to win. It doesn't matter where you live. I'll choose 4 winners randomly from those who contact me at natalie@nataliemaclean.com. Keep them for yourself or give them as gifts. If you're reading the paperback or ebook or listening to the audiobook of my memoir, Wine Witch on Fire, Rising from the Ashes of Divorce, Defamation, and Drinking Too Much, a national bestseller and one of Amazon's best books of the year, I'd love to hear from you at natalie@nataliemaclean.com. I'll put a link in the show notes to all retailers worldwide at nataliemaclean.com/387. Okay, on with the show. Michael Finnerty is a cheesemonger, journalist, and author based in London, England, and Montreal. After almost 30 years of a successful career with the CBC, BBC, and The Guardian, he found joy and a new life selling cheese at London's iconic Borough Market. Michael also has a weekly column on Penelope on Radio Canada, works part-time at Global Montreal, but for most of the year you can find him slinging cheese with the other mongers. His critically acclaimed book, The Cheese Cure, is his first book, and he joins us now from his home in Montreal. Welcome, Michael. We're so glad to have you here with us.
Hi, Natalie. It's great to be with you, and thanks very much for inviting me.
My pleasure. Before we dive into your book, let's start with some of your more memorable wine and cheese moments. Maybe tell us about the tasting you did with the UK author and TV personality, Ollie Smith.
Yeah, Ollie Smith, who is a big booster of the book, is also represented by my agent in the UK. And so she thought it would be a great idea if we did an event together where we invited people to taste through some cheeses paired with some wines. So I chose the cheeses and he chose the wines to go with them. And it was fantastic. He's a performer. It was a terrific night. People had a great time. It was in an old bookshop on Piccadilly in London. And for sheep cheese that I had chosen, which is called Osso Irati, which may be one of the, if not the oldest, one of the oldest cheeses made in Europe, he chose a Chardonnay called Neudorf Home Block Chardonnay.
From New Zealand?
From New Zealand, yeah, from New Zealand. Up front, I'm going to say I bow down to all those of you wine experts and drinkers. I am certainly not as well informed as probably most of you on wines, but for me, I had tasted a medium-bodied wine with some nice minerality that also had some savory notes and some citrusy notes and maybe a little bit of peach. And what happened was when you paired it up with the Osso Irati, which is quite a higher fat cheese because sheep's milk has a higher fat content and can be quite sweet, sort of butterscotchy, biscuity. The two of them paired together just lifted the other. And it wasn't just me who thought so. People in the audience were really impressed. My agent was like, I can't believe how delicious this is. And it was like just that perfect example of how when you hit a pairing right, when you're spot on, the wine is improved and the cheese is improved. Both are lifted.
Yes, new cloud of sensuality. They kind of meet together and neither one
Absolutely.
Could really do it for you as much as the combination.
Absolutely. And when you get it right, it tends to be a surprise, even though you know it can happen. And I always think it's one of those ephemeral things that this will never happen again. Yeah, you'll have good pairings again, but you'll never get quite this pairing because on one hand, the wine probably won't be exactly the same the next time you have it. And definitely the cheese won't be.
That's true. And had you coordinated
enjoy
in advance?
it.
Yes, absolutely. Sees life in all its possible combinations. But had you coordinated with Ollie on, did you know which wine he was bringing? Did he know what cheese you were selecting?
He knew what cheeses I was selecting.
Okay.
And then he went for the pairings.
Okay.
Probably that's the best way to do it because I think he's smarter than I am.
Well, I always start with the wine first because I'm an earrings first kind of woman and then the outfit can follow. But
Nice.
It's all about priorities no matter where you're at. Now, you also had a staff pairing tasting evening where you had a red wine and you were enjoying it until you paired it with Camembert. What happened?
So what happened was, so this was a staff tasting, and we were tasting with the representative of the company that sells a lot of our wines. And to set ourselves apart from other wine merchants on the high street where our shop is based, but also in Borough Market, we go for a selection of organic and biodynamic and natural wines so as to have a thing. So we were tasting a red. It was, I can't remember the name of the red. It was one of those cheeky names that you get from natural wines. And it was bright and fruity. And then we had some Camembert. And Camembert is a big cheese, and it's a hard cheese to pair.
It's really flavorful. Like, because I don't know anything next to you when it comes to cheeses, I always think of Camembert, Brie. I always think, oh, they're all creamy and soft. But Camembert is really quite flavorful and pungent of the soft cheeses.
For me, it's more pungent than Brie. It has a real garlicky side to it. It's always going to depend on where it is on its little journey in life, which is much shorter, obviously, than a bottle of wines. But when you get a Camembert that starts to get riper, it is going to have quite a punch and quite a garlicky taste. And what happened was that we were tasting the wine there after we tasted the cheese, and something just started to be, I didn't taste the same. And I guess kind of the same but negative way of what I just said about the Osso Errati and the Chardonnay, with this natural red and Camembert both started to taste not very nice, to be honest.
Right.
And she said, okay, wow, that has made the wine go mouse.
Huh.
I hadn't heard the term before. My wine knowledge, as I've said, is not as advanced. And apparently mouse is more of a recent taste flaw and more associated with natural wines, organic wines, biodynamic wines. It gives you a taste of kind of a guinea pig cage or a wet tortilla chip. Yeah, not so nice. Okay, we can all
Those
agree.
are not
That's not what we're
descriptors
looking
we
for.
want in wine.
And we all came to the conclusion, and I'd be interested to know what your folks think about this, but we all came to the conclusion that Camembert and wine maybe not the best combination. And maybe what's best with Camembert is like an ale or a slightly bitter cider, so that you don't have, it's something is rubbing it the wrong way in terms of the grapes and the wine.
Yeah, and I would say especially a fruity young wine, natural wine that has sometimes foxy or really funky flavors might just be a really bad match. I'm almost thinking for creamy, maybe it's too stereotypical, but creamy, I would veer toward bright white acidic wines that cut through the richness at least.
Absolutely. Bubbles too. One of the classic combinations with Brie is champagne.
Oh,
Like
yeah. That would be great.
Because the bubbles and the acidity cut through the creaminess.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So you just mentioned something interesting. Cheese has a shorter ageability or trajectory than wine. So I know it'll vary widely depending on the cheese. And of course, fresh cheeses like goat cheese or whatever you want to serve fresh and young, just like some wines like Beaujolais. But how old can the longest lived cheeses go for? What is their life?
Clearly, a Camembert is not a cheese that you will ever eat aged. When we talk about an aged Camembert or a mature Camembert, it's not going to be more than a few months maximum. But if you have an Alpine cheese, then you're going to start to get into some significant aging. We tend to sell the Alpine cow's milk cheeses around 18 to 24 months. We think that's a really nice age where you get a combination of the kind of moisture you like in the paste versus as cheese starts to age, people think that it develops salt crystals. Those are actually tyrosine crystals, and they give it a bit of a crunch.
What are they?
The
Are they
paste
like
also-
calcium or what are they? Or salts?
What happens with the fats in the milk as the cheese ages is they break down into an amino acid and form these tyrosine crystals. So it's not salt. It actually is supposed to give you a dopamine hit, amongst other things. Yeah, which I guess, yeah, it matches up with a slightly addictive quality that you get in good wines too.
Right.
Like cheese is hard to stop eating when it's good. It's good.
Yes.
So yes, so then you can get a cheese that will be 24 months. We sell Comtés as well up to 36 months. You'll get Parmigianos that are even older than that. Once you start getting past sort of 3 years, 4 years, it's going to be quite. Some cheddars, by the way, are going to be that old as well, but they're going to tense up. They'll lose their moisture, and they'll be less give in the mouth. That's for sure. But you might also get some really unexpected flavors. The flavor definitely changes over time. That's
Into
for sure.
more negative flavors as it gets too old?
It's a balance. Like, for instance, with Comté, if you're tasting an 18 to 24-month-old Comté, you're going to get some of those nice, sweet, nutty notes. And then as you get into 36-month Comté, it starts to have, for me anyway, a really kind of rum and raisin vibe. I don't know quite why that's happening. I mean, there are just endless mysteries with cheese. Why is a cheese doing a certain thing? You can always give it a stab. You can try to figure out why it's doing it, but it's often just a marvelous mystery.
Yes, and a delicious one. So sometimes it doesn't need to be picked apart, but that's fascinating because there's trajectories, of course, for wine as well. And there's some similarities in that the fruit goes from fresh to more ripened to stewy to prune to, that
Right.
kind of
Exactly.
trajectory. Yeah. Huh. So as we know, wine and cheese both start as natural liquids before they're fermented. They're aged into a dizzying range of styles and flavors. Beyond those obvious parallels, what else do you think wine and cheese share that might surprise us?
A lot of things, to be fair. I think that first of all, if people didn't realize, cheeses have appellations as well, appellation, which are granted based on applications that are made to a central authority that come with what the French call a cahier des charges, so kind of a manual on how to make the cheese. The first one having been Roquefort in 1925. Now there's loads of appellation. And they're not just French cheeses, of course. So things like Parmigiano are appellations, as are raclette in Switzerland.
So does that mean only that appellation can use that name? Like Parmigiano should only be from that place? There shouldn't be a California Parmigiano, so to speak?
Exactly. You'll get some cheeses that, like for instance, Brie. Those are going to be loads of Bries, but there's only one Brie de Meaux, which is the appellation. So, and same with cheddar, because cheddar is so widespread that by the time they started coming up with the appellations, there was no, by the way, appellation in English, designated origin, I
Origin,
think
controle. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is it. Yeah. So when they were starting to think about what to do with, for instance, cheddar, it was just decided there was no way. Too many people were making it. You couldn't suddenly say only this type of cheese is cheddar.
It's the old tissue Kleenex dilemma. They didn't protect it soon enough. Yes.
Exactly. So there's that with wine and cheese. There's also the question of terroir, which very much affects a cheese, where it comes from. It's also included in the appellation. So, for instance, Roquefort will only be from sheep. Milk from sheep who are raised in this one part of the Aveyron in France. Another similarity that maybe people don't think about as much is that milk has different varieties in the same way that grapes have different varieties because they come from different cows. Certain cheeses, I'm thinking of Beaufort, where the milk has to be one of Montbéliard is one of the milks. That's a type of cow, a variety of cow. So that's stipulated in the cahier des charges of how that cheese is made, that the milk must come from this cow, which is eating in a certain place. So the milk has the flavors of that place, that terroir, and what grows there. Different cows supply different types of milk. Some has higher fat, some has different taste.
Yeah. No, I never thought about the differences of different breeds of cattle. Like I know sheep and goat and cow all produce very different cheeses. But you're right, different types, different breeds of cattle. And of course, what they're feeding on, whether that meadow has a lot of flowers or types of grasses or whatever, is also part of the terroir of the cheese.
The cheeses will also have a category called alpage. Alpage mean you see the word alp in alpage. It means that the cows or whatever animal they're making cheese from are grazing at higher elevations. And when you're grazing at higher elevations, obviously the different plants and grasses that are there, there's a greater variety. There's different things that you would see down in the valley. And so you'll get a different quality of milk and different tastes.
Again, another parallel, because we talk about high altitude wines, like when they're planted
Absolutely.
higher, they get a different kind of disposition to the sun. Wow, I didn't know that.
There are so many things that match up. And there's this world of knowledge about cheese, which I believe is the case with wine, that I almost feel that I could never finish learning about cheese.
Yes, exactly. Exactly the way I feel about wine. I always feel like a beginner, but still interested.
Absolutely.
And are there any surprising differences that might not occur to us?
I mean, I suppose one of the big differences is that cheese is high protein, and it's not really surprising, is it? I don't know. It's a foodstuff, so it will nourish you. It will.
Right.
You can
So there is
live.
real nutrition. Yes.
Absolutely, and good nutrition, and the kind of it's good for your bones. It's got high protein. Possibly the other surprising difference with cheese is how broad the range of acceptable tastes is. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that's the case with wine. There are going to be some tastes in wine that you're going to think, that is not nice to drink. Thank you very much. And no, thank you. But if you think of cheese, there are some cheeses that taste farmy, like
Yes.
Barney.
Yeah.
There are
Euphemistically,
cheeses
yes. Yeah.
pooey. Some people will say pooey. And there are some that taste like those parts of your body that are maybe not as carefully washed as they maybe should be, and that's because they share the same bacteria. And so I think that is quite an important difference. And
Yeah.
we can talk about that more, about why people are drawn to those tastes. But for me, that's quite a big difference between wine and cheese, in that you wouldn't want your wine to taste like that.
No, I think, yeah, it's the old British saying, up to a point.
Yeah.
So we will have like wines, say in Burgundy, that are affected by Brettanomyces or Brett, which can get that barnyard smell. But if the wine was overtaken by that barnyard smell, we would say it's faulted. Just like we would say, like we have the flavor and aroma wheels, as I'm sure you do for cheese. But I think we slip into the faulted category far more easily than it sounds like than cheese. Like when it comes to wet dog and tortilla chips, wet tortilla chips, I can't get out of my head, but with a side of guinea pig. But yeah, so that's great. I love those. The similarities and differences, really illuminating. Can we also talk about the difference between a cheesemonger and an affineur, if I'm saying it correctly? A refiner, yes. Is it correct? It's like the relationship between a high-end wine merchant and a cellar master. One's kind of raising or sculpting the product. The other is really focused on selling it.
I think that's mostly it. I love the word affineur, by the way, and the closest translation that exists in English is maturer, which is a lot of R's. But it's not at all the same translation, because it's actually quite a simple French word to understand, whether you know French or not, because it comes from the word fine, which is fine. So and the verb affiner. So if you're as a verb making something finer, so that's what it is, an affineur. So you're making this cheese taste better. Basically, you're bringing it up to its potential. Yeah, exactly. Whereas a maturer, you're maturing it, which is not quite the same. It doesn't have that same idea of bringing it up. So a cheesemonger is meant to do, I think, a little bit of the affineur's job. And so we have direct contact with the cheeses. at point of sale. So we're at point of sale, I would say. Although some of my colleagues are more on the affineur side, if they're back in the caves, we have caves, so they would maybe have more of that side to the job to them. But then they might call themselves an affineur, or you might want to call them that. Cheesemonger is definitely one of those great British words. And there's a fishmonger. There are mongers. I mean, it has that sense of selling them, of cutting them, of preparing them, of making them look their best. So it's a bit of one and a bit of the other. And certainly one of the big jobs, even at the borough market stall, is to ensure that the cheeses are at their very best. And to think every morning as you take them out, get them up from their beds in the morning and take them out to be displayed, is to think, what can I do to make you better today?
Love that. So maybe we can finally now move on to your book. Well, tell us in a nutshell what the cheese cure is about. It's your story, but it's got cheese in it. It's got all kinds of really delicious information. So how would you describe it? You've got the book there, I see.
This is the UK edition. It's pretty. This is the Canadian and American edition. The book is about my later in life pivot from a career in journalism, which I loved. And instead of going into retirement, or although I'm still a bit young to go into retirement, although I mind, I decided to go into cheese. It sort of chose me while I was on a sabbatical. So the book is about how I took a break from doing my job as an early morning radio show presenter, a radio show host on the CBC in Canada. Before that, I had worked for the BBC and the Guardian. And it was a lot. The job, after several decades of doing it, and it had sort of eaten my life, that job. And I felt that I needed a change, a break. It started off as a sabbatical. I asked my bosses if I could have 6 months off unpaid, and I got them. And off I went to London, where I did used to live. I used to work in London for the BBC and the Guardian. And I decided I couldn't just hang out for 6 months. I had to do something. I'm that kind of person too that likes to be doing something. And I love Borough Market, have always loved Borough Market. They were advertising for a cheesemonger. I thought, what is a cheesemonger? So I applied for the job and got it. And the book is that story. So it tells the story of me having taken that journey. And it is also very cheesy. So throughout the entire book, we spend a lot of time with the cheeses and a lot of time with the cheesemongers. It's meant to be uplifting. It's meant to be fun.
It is. It's beautifully written. And I mean, there's your story, which is terrific. A lot of people will relate to that, a midlife shift or pivot. But also, if you want to learn about cheese, all these little cheesy goodness bits of those little crystals or little nuggets are woven in between. So it's terrific. I highly recommend it. What is the most surprising insight that you discovered while writing the book?
So look, the book is on one hand this personal journey. So there were a lot of surprising insights to me when I discovered that my life wasn't exactly where I wanted it to be at that point. And I think these things are things that sometimes we don't grasp in the day to day, because we have things to do, we have families, we have obligations, the wheel keeps turning, weeks turn into months, turn into years, and how often do we really take stock? That's a big theme in the book. And so a big insight to me was that we take stock of wine, we take stock of cheese on a regular basis. We taste it. In wine, you will taste it from the barrel. You'll also taste it if you're selling it. In cheese, we'll stick a cheese iron into the cheese and pull out a cylinder and taste it. But how often do we really do that in our own lives? If we're to extend the metaphor, do we sit down and say, well, how am I tasting right now? Am I tasting delicious, or am I a little bit sour? a little bit bitter, a little bit
Too long
bland, a
in the
little bit
cave.
boring. Too long in the cave, too long cut from the wheel, all that sort of thing. So I would say on the personal end, there's that. And then on the cheese end, my goodness, the insights,
It's great.
which were all a result of the book. But like also later on when I was working on, so each chapter has a little bit about a specific cheese at the end of it. And so I did a lot of research and I could not, I should have known, but the history of cheese to me is fascinating and how long it goes back and the role that it played. And I'll give you for instance.
Yes.
There's a blue cheese called Fourme d'Ambert, which I found a quote for, which came from a general talking about an army and how an army was more effective if they had a piece of Fourme d'Ambert in their satchel.
That's great. I love it. Yeah. Again, the parallels with wine, but yeah, no, it's a great way to structure the book and to learn more about wine, or sorry, cheese. And what was the most difficult part about writing the book? What was the greatest challenge?
One of the greatest challenges was finding the time because I was working and I didn't quit my broadcasting job either. Writing takes time. It takes focus. You have to have the right environment. I think you have to be patient with yourself. Writing takes a while. I didn't realize any of this. So that was a bit of a surprise. And I suppose the other big challenge was having not written anything before. I was a neophyte to the whole idea of narrative structure. Even though I've spent my whole life telling stories in journalism, I think intuitively knew how to tell a story. But I had a great session in a week. There was a writing foundation that allows you to go into the English countryside for a week with a bunch of people who have a manuscript that they're kind of working on. And we all sat around and read each other's stuff. And it was so eye-opening. And it really got me over a hurdle of wondering what I would do with all these notes that I'd made.
Oh, that's great. Now, going back to your journalism career, you were in New York immediately after 9/11 and covered elections in Russia. Having witnessed these major world events, what made serving cheese at Borough Market feel significant to you?
It's a good question because I think that I have people in my orbit who are thinking, why did you do this? And why is this the next act in your career? And I suppose because, those events are big events and having been in Manhattan in the days after 9/11, that will stay with me forever. And that was important work. But if we really focus on what makes the world a better place, cheese makes the world a better place. It does make the world a better place. It feeds you, it delights you. And when you sell it, you delight others. And I have taken a lot of enjoyment and my own personal delight from helping people discover cheese. And my interactions at the cheese stall compared to my interactions in the journalism world are 98% positive. Whereas as a journalist, you are sort of a monger of misery a lot of the time. I mean, there is such a thing as good news, of course, and things that are making a positive impact in the world. But let's face it, a lot of the time we're talking about war. Certainly right now, we're talking about war. We're talking about difficulties and how to overcome them, political difficulties in business, in tech, whatever. And cheese is about making you happy and making your taste buds surprised and explode. And if you have a great cheese, you feel like you're almost elevating. And I think the same is true of wine. And so that's a fun business to be in.
Yeah, it is.
That gave me a lot of joy.
Absolutely. I so resonate with you because I used to feel guilty. I wasn't, doing missionary work somewhere. And I thought, oh, I'm helping the helpless rich find their next, Bordeaux. But, I mean, we all work hard in whatever it is we do, but it comes down to those moments when we start to reconnect with others, with ourselves, with pleasure, and just, I don't know what life's about otherwise.
Around a glass of wine,
Yeah.
around a cheese board, where
Yes.
we're all experiencing something that is positive, that is making us happy. And
Yes.
I mean, if there aren't these sorts of moments in life, what's it about?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And now you also described the toll of morning radio, which you alluded to, waking up at 3 a.m., eating lunch at 8:30 in the morning, and then having to go from extrovert to introvert by mid-morning, or the collapse into back into introvert. What kind of fatigue eating did you do in those days before you entered the wonderful world of cheese?
It was not a thing am proud of, let's say, to start. And it took me a while to kind of get on top of it. But yeah, when you are tired, when you are exhausted, if you are watching this or listening to this and you have the type of job where you are working night shifts or difficult hours, you'll know that you get this sense of being worn down and fatigued. People who have a new child, I'm sure, feel the same as well. And you're looking for compensation. And the compensation is what was for me in the fridge. So I
Yes.
would open up the fridge and I would just like, what is there? And instead of having one of a certain thing, I would I should probably finish this package
Why
because
not?
otherwise it will go bad.
That's right.
So,
Yes,
so
exactly.
yeah, so and one thing leads to the other. I think what I wasn't doing in those not so great years, as I wasn't clearly preparing something to eat. I was sort of just
What was there? Yeah, yeah. The body's gotta,
what was there? What's going to make me feel better?
yeah, exactly. Now, you grew up in Canada with industrial produced blocks of bright orange cheese wrapped in heavy plastic, individually wrapped slices for hamburgers and cheese whiz, as you say. How does that childhood memory inform how you interact with cheese skeptics today?
So, yeah, I mean, coming from my experience growing up, so I was born in the late 60s, Gen X. The cheeses that we had available to us where I grew up, which was mostly in London, Ontario, were those kinds of cheeses. So I am not in a position to look down on anybody's cheese choices, which I think is important when you're mongering, when you're trying to suggest what a person might enjoy, or when you have a skeptic in front of you who is looking at these sort of very strange moldy cheeses, thinking, "What's that?" And so I, I guess I can put myself in their shoes quite easily, and I also feel that having made that journey myself, I get a lot of enjoyment out of seeing other people start off on that journey because I know that they too will end up in a surprising and a very cool place, which is a place of like discovery of tastes you didn't know existed and you didn't know you enjoyed.
Sure, sure. Yeah. Resonating again with your answer. Now, Borough Market is London's most renowned food market, located near London Bridge, operating for more than 1,000 years. It's spread out over 4.5 acres or 200,000 square feet. I love this, you describe Borough Market at dawn as a stage without the lights or actors, the decor in shadows, with something slightly sinister about it. Can you remember that first morning when you arrived, say before sunrise at Borough Market, what it was like?
The market is sometimes a spooky place. And I think one of the things that really strikes me about the market is how radically different it is through the course of the day. In the middle of the night, if you're walking around Borough Market, there is something slightly fabulous and romantic about it, but also something sinister. If, for instance, if you saw the latest Bridget Jones movie, there's a scene where she is courting the younger suitor in that film, and that's all filmed at Borough Market at night. So if you want to get an idea of what it looks like at night, which is to say that it can look great, but it can also be that place where it's dark You hear chains being unlocked and dropped to the ground, and people straining to put things in place, and forklifts going around. And yeah, it can be a tough place. So when you go in the morning, what it is that it's a blank canvas. So you're starting from that place of slightly sinister, dark, uh, looming kind of mood that turns into and what you end up drawing by with cheeses or whatever product you're selling is this cornucopia of food that is meant to appeal and delight. And so the transformation from one to the other, it's so extreme that you never get tired of it.
Wow. What's your favorite part of the market? Like, what do you love about being there? I mean, you love selling cheeses, but why in that place?
I'm not going to say there isn't a sense of pride, because there is a sense of pride working at Borough Market. You think, I work here. And when you see it in movies, for instance, or in photographs, you think, that's where I and my colleagues work. But the thing I like the best about it, I had a feeling that this was going to be true, but I don't think I realized to what extent. But it's the sense of camaraderie with the other people who work at the market. We get along well, like really well. And we work together very well. And in some senses, I suppose we're in competition because you want people to come to my stall. And sometimes the person who owns the Italian cheese and ham store next door, whose name is Phil, will say to me, "My, that's a hubristic display of cheese." So he will have a laugh with us and needle us, but he wants us to have customers, and we want him to have customers. And I love seeing my fellow colleagues. I will always go when I open up the stall next door to Phil's stall, and his daughter is often there, and I will always have a chat with her. We'll have a hug, we'll have a chat, we'll find out how last night was, and it feels great. I mean, in a way that, and I know all workers have a sense of camaraderie. There's also a sense of rivalry. I feel that in the food business, I don't feel that rivalry as much as I do in journalism, not by a long shot.
Interesting to compare the two. Yeah. Now,
And there's wine merchants as well at the market.
okay.
Fantastic. I love them. And they always give me free wine. So, and I
Well,
give them free cheese.
They love you too, then. That's great. Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed our chat with Michael. Here are my takeaways. Number 1, why do some wine and cheese pairings taste better together than either one does alone? As Michael explained, he tasted a medium-bodied wine with some nice minerality that also had some savory and citrus notes and a little bit of peach. It had some acidity, but not too much. And this was paired with Asau Arati, which is quite a higher fat cheese because sheep's milk has a higher fat content and it can be quite sweet, sort of butterscotchy, biscuity. Sounds so good. But with the two of them paired together, one lifted the other. Everyone in the audience was so impressed. It was just a perfect example of when you hit the pairing right, the wine and the cheese are both improved and lifted. Number 2, why do some wines collapse when paired with certain cheeses? Michael recounts the time when he was tasting a red. It was a natural wine, bright and fruity, and then they had the Camembert. Camembert is a big cheese, and it's very hard to pair with wine. It's more pungent than Brie, and it has a real garlicky side to it, he says. And it always depends on where it is on its journey in life as it ages. When Camembert gets really ripe, it's going to have quite a punch, quite a garlicky taste. Garlic is always tough on wine. So this combination was kind of a disaster. And finally, what else about wine and cheese might surprise us? As Michael says, a lot of people don't realize that cheeses have appellations just like wines do. And they're based and regulated by a central authority. That comes from what the French call the cahier des charges, sort of a manual on how to make cheese. The first one was granted in 1925, and now there's loads of appellations. And not just for French cheeses. Italians and the Swiss have it for Parmigiano and raclette. You'll get some cheeses, for instance, like Brie, There's lots of Bries on the market, but there is only one Brie de Meaux, which is an appellation. So if you missed episode 92, go back and take a listen. I chat about pairing wine and cheese like a pro with author Laura Werlin. I'll share a short clip with you now to whet your appetite.
What you're looking for, ideally, when you are pairing, is one of three things. The way I define them is that you have what I call Switzerland. So you have this neutral pairing, and you have the cheese and you have the wine, and you have them together, and they're fine. They taste fine. Nothing wrong. They play well on the sandbox together. And then you have what I call the Titanic. So as we all know, that didn't end very well.
Oh.
And so you have the cheese and you have the wine, and together they make these other flavors that you kind of wish you hadn't had. Luckily, that doesn't happen very often.
What are the bad flavors? Just the clashing or other?
Yeah. Well, it can be, for instance, soapy. So the same kind of cheese that you're eating, the soft ripened cheese.
Yes.
With that kind of cheese, the rind is the first thing that starts to deteriorate when it's going downhill. So you will taste that and taste it with wine. And at first it might taste fine, but then all of a sudden it kind of goes south.
You won't want to miss next week when we continue our chat with Michael. And to give you a taste of future guests, we'll have Professor Mark Scarlatta on the intersection of wine and religion, Dr. David Nutt on wine and health, Ben Hawkins on port and sherry, global bartending champion Caitlin Stewart on fresh new cocktails, humorist Maryse Chevrier on how to sound wine smart, Kara Newman on 40 cocktails to close any evening, James Chatto on the iconic recipes and drinks that have shaped our taste, Liz Gabet on rosé, Christiane Westre on sake, Dr. Charles Knowles on why we drink too much, and Marisol de la Fuente on the wines of Argentina. Do you have a question for any of our guests? Please let me know. Do you have a suggestion for a guest I should have on this show? I want to hear from you. Do you know someone who'd be interested in learning more about buying and enjoying cheese? Please let them know about this podcast. Email them or text them now while you're thinking about it. It's easy to find the Unreserved Wine Talk podcast. Just tell them to search for that title or my name, Natalie McLean Wine, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, their favorite podcast app, or they can listen to the show on my website at nataliemclean.com/podcast. Email me if you have a sip tip question or if you'd like to win one of 7 drinks books that I have to give away. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on this episode, or if you've read my book or are listening to it. Email me at natalie@nataliemclean.com. In the show notes, you'll also find a link to take a free online food and wine pairing class with me called the 5 Wine and Food Pairing Mistakes That Can Ruin Your Dinner and How to Fix Them Forever at nataliemclean.com/class. And that's all in the show notes at nataliemclean.com/387. Thank you for taking the time to join me here. I hope something great is in your glass this week. Perhaps a wine that pairs beautifully with your favorite cheese. You don't want to miss one juicy episode of this podcast, especially the secret, full-bodied bonus episodes that I don't announce on social media. So subscribe for free now at nataliemclean.com/subscribe. Meet me here next week. Cheers.